Hey guys, welcome to the spine and the scapula. So in this video, we're going to talk about the relationship of your shoulder blade or your scapula with your spine. In the first part of this video, I'm going to be sitting and then we'll move down to the floor. There will be times where I turn my back to you, hopefully giving you a better picture of my scapula, or sometimes turning to the side to give you info on what I'm actually moving. So what are the scapula or the shoulder blades? The scapula, also called the shoulder blades, are two bones. They look like wings that are going to sit right here and right there. So they sit kind of right at the top middle part of your rib cage, okay? And what they do is they glide around the rib cage. So sometimes they can come towards each other, they can come away from each other, or towards the spine and away from the spine. They can glide up the rib cage towards the ears, or glide down the rib cage towards the butt. So whenever you're talking about scapular movement, it changes either the height of your arm in relation to your spine, or it can change more towards the front part of your body or more towards the back part of your body. That would look kind of like this. So basically, the scapula is just a way that we increase range of motion when we're reaching for things. It allows us to kind of pull our arm all the way back there, all the way up there. So the scapula just increases range of motion available in the arm. And when we lose control of our scapula, then we tend to start using our spine to move our arm. A really common example of this is when someone goes to raise their arm up overhead and their scapula isn't working properly. So they can get to about here, but then they start to hyperextend their back to reach the rest of the way. All right? Our goal in this video is going to teach you, what do my scapula do? Can I feel them doing that? Can I control them? And can I isolate them so I don't have to use my low back to move my arm? So let's start in defining 4 basic movements of the scapula so that we can use the same words to talk. Let's sit with our arms at our sides. When we shrug our shoulders up towards our ears like this, that is called elevation of the scapula. My scapula is moving in one direction, straight up. So the bones are just sliding up the rib cage. Let's go back down to neutral. Let's do 5 elevations of the scapula. Up. That's 1. You should feel your neck gets a little tight when you do this. Up. That's 2. Make sure you're going straight up and not rounding forward or not moving your spine forward, backward. Up. That's 3. Also feel them going back down to neutral. Up. That's 4. When you go back down to neutral, you should feel a decrease in tension happening in the neck. Up. That's 5. So that's elevation, moving the scapula up. What's the opposite of elevation? That would be pulling the scapula down towards the floor, or I just reached a little bit further towards the floor. Relax. Notice I didn't go and crunch down towards the floor. That's spinal movement, okay? Stabilize the spine using your deep core musculature, and let's try 5 downward movements of the scapula, which is going to be referred to as depression. Down. Depress, reach down. We should try to get a stretch in our neck. Relax. Depress again. Reach down. Try not to let it pull your head like this. Keep your neck neutral. Relax. Depress again. You should feel a nice stretch through your neck as you depress. Make sure you're not pinching your shoulder blades backwards when you do it. Relax. We got 2 more. Down. Relax. And 1 more. Down. relax. Good. What you will notice about depression is that it's not nearly as far of a range of motion as elevation is. That's okay, that's normal. You might also notice that it's difficult for you to do that without moving your head or without moving your spine. This is probably because you're just not aware and control of your scapula, and with practice, you will get better at it. Just make sure you're practicing in isolation and not compensating in any way. So we have elevation and depression, up and down. Those are one plane of motion, up and down, and they are opposites. Now, let's talk about another plane of motion. I'm going to turn sideways for you to see this at first, and then I might even spin around. So the other plane of motion would be towards the spine or away from the spine. Okay, another way to think about this would be towards the spine would be my arms kind of coming back behind my torso. Away from the spine would be my arms coming forward around my torso. So remember, the rib cage is a circular structure. So retraction, protraction moves on an arc, an arcing pattern, kind of like a hula hoop around your body. If I was to do this, it's kind of going in a circular motion around the body. Okay? Let's isolate these and let's work on the first movement, which is shoulder blades away from the spine. This is called protraction. Okay? Make your arms stiff. So we're locking out our elbow. I don't want to see any rotation of the arm. So if you look at my elbow pits are forward, my elbows are backwards. They're going to stay in that direction. Let's try to pull our shoulder blades away from the spine through protraction. Begin. Feel the scapula come around. It should almost feel like you're squeezing your chest together. And then back to neutral. That's one. Make sure we're not turning it into elevation or depression. The shoulder should not change height, it's just coming forward. Let's try again. Forward. That's two. Try not to extend the neck either. Forward. Three. Forward or protract. Four. One more time with protraction. Five. So that is your scapula moving away from the spine. Another way to think about it is that your spine's being pushed backwards. This will come in handy in the long spine drill. Now let's talk about the opposite of protraction, which is retraction. How do I pull my shoulder blades towards my spine? Same deal with the arms. They stay stiff, they stay straight, there's no rotation through them. I'm going to just retract or pull towards the spine by moving my arms backwards around my rib cage. That's one. Let's do four more together. Backwards or retract. Two. Make sure you're not hyperextending the back as you do this. Backwards, retract. Three. Backwards, retract. Four. And one more. Five. So if you were doing all four of those movements correctly, then we have kind of moved our scapula in a pretty great range of motion. We went up, we went down, we went forward, we went backwards. Okay? So we glided our scapula all along the rib cage. Let's put these movements together in a circle. The circle is called a controlled articular rotation. Controlled, meaning it's slow, focused movement that you're trying to feel and control throughout the whole range of motion. Articular, and articulation is another name for a joint, so which is a fancy word for a joint. So controlled joint rotation, okay? Moving in a circular motion. So if we're to connect elevation and depression in this plane of motion and protraction, retraction in this plane of motion, then we're going to make kind of a circle with it. So stay with me. Stabilize the spine first. We know how to do that by pulling in our TVA and our pelvic floor. Let's start in elevation. So here's our starting point. We're elevated. Let's hold elevation and move to protraction. So just push forward or allow the scapula to come away from the spine. Hold protraction and we will depress. So I'm keep pushing forward, but I'm just lowering the level of my shoulders. Now I'm in protraction and depression. Let's hold depression, but retract. So I'm going to keep pushing down and pinch those shoulder blades backwards. Let's hold retraction, but now elevate. So keep my shoulders as far back as I can as I shrug up towards the ceiling. Now let's hold elevation and protract. If you notice, we just made one lap around, fully moving our scapula in its fullest range of motion in isolation. Let's try one more time in this direction. We're going to maintain protraction as we depress. Don't move the spine. Maintain depression as we retract. Maintain retraction as we elevate. Maintain elevation as we protract. There's our second lap. Circles go in both directions. We need to move our shoulder in both directions in order to train it so that I can go in any direction that we want. Let's keep elevated. Let's retract. Let's keep retraction. Let's depress. Let's keep depression and protract. Keep protraction, elevate. That's one lap. Notice my arms are not rotating. One more lap around in the reverse direction. Let's hold elevation, retract. Hold retraction, depress. Hold depression, protract. Hold protraction, elevate. We're back to where we started. Rest. So we just did two scapula controlled articular rotations in each direction. The short word for a controlled articular rotation is a CAR, C-A-R. That's the abbreviated way of saying it. So we did two scapular CARs in each direction, forward, backward. Okay? Notice that I wasn't rotating my arms. They stayed down at my side. And all of the musculature I was feeling is kind of around my rib cage, upper back, and chest. It's all on my torso. The stuff moving me is not in my arms. Okay? I'm going to turn sideways here. And we're going to try a controlled articular rotation of the scapula, but with my arms in a different orientation. Okay? Excuse me. Let's hold our arms straight out in front of us. Long spine position. Don't rotate the arms at all. Hold thumbs up. Okay? Now let's do our controlled articular rotations that we just did, two in each direction, without letting our arms drop down. Okay? So we'll be here. Let's start elevated. Let's maintain elevation and protract. Maintain protraction and depress. Maintain depression and retract. Maintain retraction and elevate. Maintain elevation and protract. There's one lap. Maintain protraction and depress. Maintain depression and retract. Maintain retraction, elevate, maintain elevation, protract. Relax the arms. If you did that properly, then you should have felt it's harder than when your arms are at your sides. The reason for that is because you have the whole weight of your arm that you're stabilizing out here. So same exact movement of the scapula, but we've just changed the load that goes on the scapula by putting our arms out. That's a little bit harder. Let's try our car in the reverse direction with our arms out in front of us again. Arms out in front. Let's start in elevation. Let's begin by retracting. Now hold retraction, depress. Hold depression, protract. Hold protraction, elevate. Hold elevation, retract. One more lap around. Hold retraction, depress. Hold depression, protract. Hold protraction, elevate, and hold elevation, retract, rest. So that is 2 laps in the reverse direction. What I want you to be aware of is that my spine never moved when I was going through that scapular car. My arm didn't move except because my scapula was moving. So that is attached. This moves because of the scapula. It doesn't move independently of the scapula. I always have some semblance of the long spine position because I got to stabilize that. Okay? There is one more variation that I want to do with our scapula and the spine, and that's going to be from all fours. And I want to do this because this is going to help you with your cat-cow and your spinal mobility stuff. What if I want to do a car from the all 4 positions and I don't want to turn it into a cat-cow spinal movement? So let's get into long spine position. So belly pulled in, TVA active, chin tucked. The directions of the scapula are the same that when we were sitting, even though now we're on all 4s. So elevation is still towards the ears. Depression is still away from the ears or towards the hips. Retraction is still towards the spine. Protraction is still away from the spine. Let's try that again together. Let's move in all 4 directions. So let's start with elevation and depression. Hold neutral in terms of retraction, protraction. So don't fall down, don't push up, hold somewhere in between. And let's try to elevate and depress. That's 1. We're going to do 3 of these. I want you to look at my spine while I do this. Elevate and depress. There is minimal movement from the spine. It is just my shoulders are changing levels in relation to my ears and my hips. I also want you to notice that there's no spinning of my arms when I do this. I'm holding them in this externally rotated position. You can hold them wherever you want. They can be there, but just don't spin them during the movement. Okay, let's go somewhere between elevation and depression, and let's try to retract, so pinch them towards the spine. Make sure you didn't shrug your shoulders. Make sure you didn't turn it into a cat position or cow position. Protract. So the scapula have just come away from the spine. Make sure you didn't round the whole spine. We're just moving the scapula. Retract, so the whole body sinks towards the floor because the scapula is coming towards the spine. Protract, the whole body comes away from the floor because the scapula are coming away from the spine. Protract or retract, pinch together. Protract, spread them apart. Now let's put them together in a controlled articular rotation. Let's start in elevation. we are going to retract but remain elevated. Keep retraction and depress. Keep depression and protract. Keep protraction and elevate. Keep elevation and retract. Keep retraction and depress. Keep depression and protract. Keep protraction and elevate. We just did 2 circles in one direction. Let's reverse. Keep protraction, depress. Keep depression, retract. Keep retraction, elevate. Keep elevation, protract. Keep protraction, depress. Keep depression, retract. Keep retraction, elevate. Keep elevation, protract. We just did 2 cars in the other direction. The differentiating between the scapula and the spine is quite difficult. It takes a lot of practice. Trying to visualize that the scapula is just a bone that floats on the rib cage should help you. And knowing that in order to move your scapula, you have to stabilize the spine by using your deep core muscles should also help you. It's okay if your scapular movements are quite small to begin with. Most people's are because we don't train it enough. Keep it small, keep it focused, keep it isolated. Do not compensate. If you compensate during these movements, you're never going to get better at them. That is the scapula and the spine tutorial.